Jack was nervous as he walked into the large, strange building that was the alien school. He had never been to a place like this before. He had always felt out of place on Earth, but this was different. Here, there were no other humans, only strange beings from all across the galaxy. The first thing Jack noticed was how different everything seemed. The walls of the school weren't just made of stone or metal, like on Earth. They shimmered and moved, almost alive, as if the building itself was breathing. Jack could feel the eyes of his new classmates on him, their gazes curious, suspicious, and sometimes even a little scared. The classroom was unlike any Jack had ever seen. It was a circular room with seats that floated, each one hovering slightly above the ground. His classmates, who looked like a mix of every creature imaginable, were already seated. There were tall beings with glowing skin, creatures with multiple eyes, and others that looked more like giant plants than animals. They were all speaking in different languages, but the moment Jack stepped inside, everything went silent. They stared at him with wide eyes, as if he was the strangest thing they had ever seen. Jack smiled awkwardly, trying to make a good impression. "Hi," he said, unsure of how to greet them. "I'm Jack. I'm human." He wasn't sure why he added that last part, but it felt important. The students exchanged glances, and some of them seemed to relax, but others looked at him like he had just spoken in a language they didn't understand. The teacher, a tall alien with shimmering scales and 3 sets of wings, motioned for Jack to sit in an empty seat. "Welcome, Jack," the teacher said, though it sounded more like a series of melodic tones than actual words. Jack understood the message because the room was equipped with translation devices, which allowed everyone to understand each other, no matter the species. He sat down nervously, feeling the eyes of everyone on him. For the first few minutes, the lesson was normal. The teacher spoke about the history of the galaxy, the different races, and the importance of cooperation between species. Jack listened carefully, but he couldn't help but feel out of place. He had never been in a school like this before. The other students were all so different. They had abilities Jack couldn't even begin to understand. One student, who looked like a floating jellyfish with tentacles, was taking notes by writing on the air itself, the words glowing in front of it like holograms. Another, who seemed to be made entirely of light, wasn't even sitting in a chair. It just hovered in midair, its glowing form shifting like liquid. Then, in the middle of the lesson, something strange happened. One of the students raised a hand. It was a small, insect-like creature, with 6 legs and huge eyes that made Jack think of a praying mantis. The creature's voice was high-pitched and clicking, but the translation device made it sound clear to Jack. "I have a question," the student said, its voice full of curiosity. "What is the creature known as?" "A hippopotamus." The entire room fell silent. Jack blinked, unsure why this simple question caused such a reaction. It was just an animal from Earth, something Jack had seen many times in zoos. But as soon as the word left the student's mouth, every single student in the room froze. It was like time itself had stopped. Their eyes widened, and some of them even backed away from Jack's desk. The teacher's wings fluttered nervously, and for the first time, Jack noticed a hint of fear in the teacher's eyes. "The hippopotamus," the teacher repeated, though it wasn't really a question. It sounded more like a warning. "Why would you ask about that?" Another student, a tall, reptilian creature with sharp teeth, asked, its voice low and tense. Jack was confused. "It's just a creature from Earth," he said, trying to brush off the tension. "It's harmless. You see them in zoos. They're big, but they don't hurt anyone." But his words didn't seem to help. The students exchanged frightened glances. The jellyfish-like student, who had been so calm before, was now trembling. "You don't understand," it whispered, though its voice was barely audible. "You shouldn't have said that." Jack was starting to feel uneasy. "What's going on?" he asked, trying to hide the nervousness in his voice. "It's just a word. A harmless animal." But no one answered him. The teacher stepped forward, its voice shaky as it spoke. "Jack, you don't know what you've done." The teacher's eyes flickered with worry. "The hippopotamus is no ordinary creature. It is a symbol, a name we dare not speak aloud. It's an ancient terror, one that has caused countless civilizations to tremble." Jack stared at the teacher, his heart racing. "A terror," he repeated, feeling a chill run down his spine. "What are you talking about?" The teacher sighed, its wings drooping slightly. "The hippopotamus is linked to an ancient legend, one that has been passed down through countless generations of species across the galaxy. It's a creature of great power, and its very name holds a dark, terrifying weight. We fear that if its name is spoken too often, if it's remembered too much, the ancient forces it represents might awaken." Jack's mind was spinning. But it's just an animal. How could it be so dangerous? The teacher looked at him with pity. "You don't understand, Jack. On Earth, it may seem harmless, but throughout the galaxy, the hippopotamus is more than that. It is tied to something much older, something far more dangerous. You've unknowingly unlocked a fear that many species have tried to forget." Jack's mouth went dry. He had thought the school would be the chance to make new friends, to learn about different alien cultures. But now, it seemed like his presence was causing something he couldn't control. The mention of one word, one simple creature, had set off a chain of events that Jack couldn't fully understand. His classmates were afraid of him, afraid of the name he had spoken. And now, Jack realized, he might have just unleashed something terrible, something that could change everything. He sat in stunned silence, his mind racing. What had he just done? And why did the word hippopotamus cause such fear? He knew he had to find out, but he wasn't sure where to start. His first day in alien school was not going how he had imagined. It wasn't going to be easy to fit in here, not when the very mention of an Earth animal could send everyone into a panic. Jack had only just begun to understand how much bigger this galaxy was than he ever realized, and he was starting to get the feeling that his presence here was more important than he had first thought, though not in the way he'd hoped. The next day, Jack walked into class with a heavy feeling in his chest. His classmates, who had once seemed so curious and welcoming, now avoided him. It wasn't obvious at first, but the longer Jack stayed in the classroom, the more he noticed. The tall reptilian student, who had once smiled at him, now glared at him from across the room. The jellyfish-like student, who had seemed friendly, now shuddered and kept its distance. Even Zork, the alien who had tried to introduce himself the day before, gave Jack a nervous nod but quickly turned away. Jack didn't know what was happening. He tried to ask Zork what was wrong, but the alien only muttered something about danger and ancient forces before walking away. Jack couldn't understand what was going on. All he had done was mention the word hippopotamus, and now everything had changed. He felt like an outcast in a place where he had hoped to find a new home, a place where he could learn about alien cultures and maybe make some friends. During lunch, Jack sat alone at one of the floating tables. Normally, students would gather in groups, talking and laughing, sharing stories of their home planets. But today, the room was quieter than usual. The other students sat in small, isolated groups, and Jack could feel their eyes on him. It was as if he was some kind of dangerous animal, something they needed to watch carefully. He tried to make eye contact with one of the students, but they quickly looked away. Even the teacher seemed distant, only offering Jack a brief glance before turning back to the rest of the class. Jack didn't know what to do. His mind kept going back to the conversation he had with the teacher yesterday. The hippopotamus is linked to an ancient legend, the teacher had said. It's a symbol, a name we dare not speak aloud. Jack's thoughts raced. How could a simple animal from Earth be so important? He had lived his entire life without knowing anything about the hippopotamus being dangerous. It was just a big, semi-mild animal. It wasn't even the most dangerous animal on Earth. But here, on this alien world, it seemed to carry an unimaginable weight. Why is everyone acting like this? Jack muttered to himself, looking down at his lunch, which he had lost all appetite for. He poked at the food in front of him, lost in thought. He had to get answers. The fear in the room was growing. He could see it in their eyes. Whatever the hippopotamus represented, it was real. He was beginning to think it wasn't just a myth or a legend. There was something more to it, something darker. That afternoon, Jack decided to confront the teacher. He needed answers. As soon as the bell rang, signaling the end of class, Jack quickly approached the teacher, who was tidying up papers at the front of the room. The teacher looked up and smiled faintly, though Jack could see the anxiety in their eyes. "Jack," the teacher said quietly, "I'm glad you've come. I've been waiting for this moment." Jack frowned, confused. "Waiting? For what? I don't understand. What's going on? Why are they all so scared of me?" The teacher glanced around nervously to make sure no one was listening. "You need to understand, Jack, that the hippopotamus is not just a creature. It is a symbol of something far older than any of us. Long ago, it was believed to be the embodiment of destruction, a harbinger of war and devastation. Its name is a trigger, a reminder of a time when these creatures, and those like them, nearly wiped out entire civilizations." Jack's heart began to pound as he listened. "But it's just an animal. It's not even dangerous. I've seen them at the zoo back on Earth. They just float in the water and seem lazy." The teacher sighed, their wings fluttering in distress. "What you see as harmless is not how the rest of the galaxy sees it. The hippopotamus has a long, dark history that dates back to a time when ancient forces ruled the universe. It is said that in the past, beings like it were capable of bending reality itself. Some of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy feared them." "Why?" Jack asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why would anyone fear an animal like that?" The teacher hesitated for a moment, as if deciding whether to share the full truth. "The hippopotamus is tied to a race of beings who possessed immense power. They could manipulate the fabric of space and time. Their strength was unmatched. They were like gods, powerful, terrifying, and unstoppable. The hippopotamus was one of their symbols, and the moment that name is spoken, it calls forth a memory of their wrath." Jack's mind was spinning. But why would that scare them now? "I'm just one human from Earth. I'm not connected to any of that. Why would the word hippopotamus even have that kind of power?" The teacher's eyes were full of sadness. "Jack, the ancient powers you've awakened by speaking that word are dormant, but they're still there. And now, because of you, those who remember that fear will do anything to make sure it doesn't rise again." Jack felt a chill run through him. "What do I do? How do I stop this?" The teacher looked at him with sympathy. "There's nothing you can do. The fear has been set in motion. The best you can do now is survive. There are others who will want to control the power that word has unlocked. The hippopotamus is a symbol of something that hasn't been fully understood for millennia. It's best you stay out of their way." "But I didn't ask for this," Jack shouted, his frustration building. "I didn't ask for any of this." The teacher's voice softened. "I know, but there's no going back now." Jack stood in silence for a moment, trying to process everything the teacher had just told him. He felt like his world was turning upside down. How had one simple word, one animal, caused such chaos? And why did he have to be the one to bring it up? With no answers, and no one willing to help him understand, Jack made a decision. He couldn't just sit back and let this fear control his life. He had to find out the truth about the hippopotamus and what had made it so feared. He didn't know what kind of power it had, but he was determined to figure it out. As he left the teacher's office, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into a danger he couldn't yet comprehend. He was no longer just the new kid at alien school. He had become a part of something much bigger, and he had no idea how deep this mystery ran or what it would cost him to solve it. Jack spent the following days walking the halls of the school with a weight heavier than ever before. His classmates no longer just avoided him. They actively feared him. He could hear whispers everywhere he went, the name Hippopotamus floating on the edge of conversations as he passed by. It was like a shadow that stretched across the entire school, and Jack, now more than ever, felt the strange power that word held. As the days dragged on, Jack couldn't ignore the fact that this was no ordinary school. He had assumed, when he first arrived, that this place would be like any other school back on Earth, full of eager students, enthusiastic teachers, and a sense of curiosity. But now, it was something else entirely. He had become a source of tension, confusion, and above all, fear. The word hippopotamus had made him the center of something dark, something that even the staff seemed to dread. One morning, Jack was walking to class when he noticed a group of alien students talking in hushed tones. They didn't even try to hide their whispers. As Jack approached, one of them, a tall, muscular alien with thick scales and sharp teeth, looked up, and their eyes widened in terror. Without saying a word, they turned and quickly scurried off down the hallway. It was like they couldn't even bear to be in his presence for more than a second. "Hey," Jack called out, feeling a burst of frustration. "What's going on? Why is everyone so scared of me? What did I do?" But the alien didn't answer. Instead, they disappeared around the corner, leaving Jack standing there, more confused and isolated than ever before. He felt a deep sense of loneliness creep in, a feeling that his classmates were no longer the people he had met just a few days ago. They were something else, something distant. The word hippopotamus had changed everything. Later that afternoon, Jack found himself in the school's common area, staring at a holographic map of the galaxy projected on the wall. His mind was still reeling from the conversation with the teacher, but there was something else gnawing at him. A need for answers, a hunger to understand why the hippopotamus carried such weight. He had to know more about the legend, about the ancient powers that had been awakened by the mere mention of that word. It was then that Jack saw Zork, the alien who had been his first friend at the school. Zork had avoided him more and more as the days passed, but Jack couldn't just let him go without answers. He walked up to Zork, who was sitting alone at a table, staring at the floor. "Zork," Jack said quietly, "I need to know what's going on. What's the deal with this hippopotamus thing? Why does everyone act like it's some kind of curse?" Zork's eyes flicked up to meet Jack's, and for a brief moment, Jack saw the fear in them. Zork opened his mouth as if to speak, but then closed it, glancing around nervously as though checking for anyone who might be listening. He leaned in closer, lowering his voice to a whisper. "Jack," he said softly, "you have to understand. The hippopotamus isn't just an animal. It's not even just a word. It's a key to something much darker. Long ago, a race of ancient beings used the hippopotamus as a symbol to control immense power. They didn't just conquer planets, they conquered entire galaxies. They could bend space and time to their will. And they used the hippopotamus as a reminder of their dominance, a symbol of the destruction they left behind." Jack's heart raced as he listened. But why does it matter now? It's just a word. Why are people scared of it now? Zork hesitated before answering, his voice shaky. Because the ancient beings who used the hippopotamus symbol didn't just disappear. They left their mark on the universe. Some of their descendants are still out there, still powerful. And when someone like you, someone from a peaceful world like Earth, says that word, it triggers something in them. It reminds them of their power, and they will do anything to make sure it doesn't rise again. Jack shook his head in disbelief. "So you're saying that just by saying one word, I've made everyone afraid of me? How is that even possible? I'm just a regular kid. I don't have any power." Zork's face darkened. "You may not have the power, but the word does. And those who understand it, who remember the old ways, know what it means. It's a warning. You need to be careful, Jack. If you don't understand what you've done, it could be too late." Jack felt a cold sweat form on his forehead. The weight of Zork's words was beginning to sink in. It wasn't just the other students who feared the hippopotamus. It was the entire galaxy, The history of the universe itself seemed to be tied up in this one word. Jack didn't know how he had triggered it, but he was certain now that he had somehow awakened something ancient, something powerful. "I didn't mean to," Jack muttered, his mind spinning with the possibilities. "I didn't know." "I know," Zork said, his voice soft with sympathy. "But now you do. And you need to figure out what to do next, before things get worse." Jack stared at the floor, trying to make sense of everything. He had come to this school to learn, to make new friends and experience alien cultures. Instead, he had unleashed a terrifying force by speaking the single word. He felt more alone than ever, and the idea of facing whatever dangers lay ahead seemed impossible. But one thing was clear: he couldn't just sit back and let this force take control of his life. "I need to learn everything about this," Jack said, determination creeping into his voice. "If I don't, who knows what could happen?" Zork nodded gravely. "Be careful, Jack. There are those who would want to use this against you. There are ancient forces that still watch, and they'll stop at nothing to make sure the hippopotamus doesn't rise again." As Jack left the common area, he felt a new resolve taking root inside him. He wasn't sure what he was up against, but one thing was for certain: he would find the answers. He would discover the truth behind the hippopotamus, and he would make sure that whatever dangers it represented would not control him. The future of not just himself, but the entire galaxy, depended on it. The next day, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was about to happen. The entire school had gone silent. The usual chatter and laughter had been replaced by tense silence and sidelong glances. He could see it in the faces of the students he passed in the hallways. Fear, confusion, and a sense of urgency that made his stomach twist with unease. He had no idea what was going on, but he knew it had everything to do with the word he had spoken. Hippopotamus. That one innocent word had changed everything. Jack sat in his next class, but he couldn't focus on the lesson. His thoughts kept drifting to Zork's warning. There are those who would want to use this against you. What did that mean? Who would want to use the power of the hippopotamus? And what power was Zork talking about? Jack could feel it now, the weight of something dark and ancient hanging in the air, just beyond his reach. He had to know more, but where could he find answers? As the bell rang to signal the end of class, Jack quickly gathered his things and headed out of the room. He had to find Zork again. Zork had known more than anyone about the history of the hippopotamus. He had to have more answers. But when Jack reached the hallway, Zork was nowhere to be found. Jack scanned the area, hoping to catch a glimpse of his friend, but the alien was nowhere in sight. It was as if Zork had disappeared. Jack's heart raced. He was beginning to realize that Zork was more than just a friendly classmate. He was a lifeline, someone who knew how to navigate this world Jack had stumbled into, someone who understood the hidden dangers lurking beneath the surface. Without Zork, Jack was alone, completely alone. He turned a corner and bumped into a tall, gangly alien who had been one of the first to avoid him after he'd said the word. The alien's large eyes widened in shock, and then something unexpected happened. Instead of scurrying away, the alien froze. For a long moment, the two of them just stood there, staring at each other. Jack's mind raced, and then, in a voice barely above a whisper, the alien spoke. "You have to leave," the alien said urgently, glancing over his shoulder nervously. "You don't understand. You've called it. The force is awake now." Jack's stomach dropped. "What force? What do you mean?" The alien's voice dropped lower, almost to a whisper. "It's the hippopotamus." He seemed to hesitate before continuing. "The Guardians. They've noticed. They're coming." Jack felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. "What Guardians? What do you mean, they're coming?" Before the alien could answer, there was a loud, unmistakable sound of something heavy landing nearby, like the thud of enormous feet hitting the ground. The walls shook slightly, and the sound echoed down the hallway. The alien's eyes widened, and he backed away, his body tense with fear. "They're here. the alien whispered, his voice trembling. "The Guardians. They won't stop until you're gone." Without another word, the alien turned and bolted down the hallway, leaving Jack standing there, his heart racing. What did he mean by Guardians, and why did they want him gone? Jack didn't have time to think about it for long. The air in the hallway had shifted. It was charged now, as if something powerful was close. He could feel it, the oppressive weight of an ancient presence bearing down on him, just beyond the corner. Something was coming, something that had been awakened by his careless words. And it wasn't friendly. Jack turned and ran, heart pounding in his chest. He didn't know where he was going, but he couldn't stay there. As he rounded a corner, he saw a figure standing at the end of the hallway. The figure was tall and imposing, its features dark and indistinct. It wore an armor-like suit, and its eyes glowed with an eerie light. Jack froze in his tracks, his breath catching in his throat. The figure didn't move, didn't even seem to acknowledge his presence. It was as if the figure was waiting for something. Who are you?" Jack asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. The figure's head tilted slightly, and a low, growling voice responded. "You are the one who spoke the word. You are the one who awakened us." Jack's heart skipped a beat. The word, the hippopotamus. This was one of the Guardians Zork had warned him about. "I didn't mean to," Jack said quickly, his words tumbling out in a frantic rush. "I didn't know what it meant. I didn't understand." The figure stepped forward, its movements slow and deliberate, the heavy armor clanking with each step. "It does not matter," the Guardian said, its voice cold and distant. "The word has been spoken. The power has been awakened. And now you must face the consequences." Jack took a step back, his mind racing. This was it, the moment he had been dreading. But before he could say anything else, the ground beneath his feet shook again, this time harder than before. A roar echoed through the halls, shaking the very walls of the building. Jack turned in panic, looking for a way out, but the hallway seemed to stretch out forever. There was no escape. The Guardian raised its hand, and in that moment, Jack felt a surge of power unlike anything he had ever experienced before. It was as if the very air around him had turned to ice. He could feel the weight of an ancient force pressing down on him, making it harder to breathe. "This is your final warning," the Guardian intoned. "Leave now, or face the full wrath of the Guardians." Jack's mind was racing. He had no idea what to do, but one thing was clear. He couldn't just give up. He couldn't let this ancient power control him. But how could he stop it? How could he fight something so vast, so ancient, and so powerful? He turned and ran, not knowing where he was going, only that he had to get away. Behind him, the roar of the Guardian's fury echoed through the hallways. But Jack didn't stop. He couldn't stop. His only hope now was to find Zork, to understand what was happening before it was too late. And with every step he took, Jack felt the weight of the universe itself pressing down on him, reminding him that he had awakened something far bigger than himself, something that would stop at nothing to see him gone. Jack's heart pounded in his chest as he sprinted through the school corridors. His mind raced, struggling to make sense of everything that was happening. The Guardians, the ancient force, the word hippopotamus. It was all too much. He couldn't understand why something as simple as a word had triggered such a powerful and terrifying reaction. Why had he been the one to awaken it? What was it about humans that made this word so dangerous? He barely had time to think as he turned another corner, barely dodging a group of students who were quickly scattering in the opposite direction. Fear was like a contagious illness here, and everyone felt it. Even the teachers had disappeared, their usual authority replaced by uncertainty and caution. The whole school was on edge. Jack didn't know where he was running anymore. His legs were burning, his breath ragged, but he couldn't stop. He had to keep moving. He needed to find answers. As he rounded another corner, Jack saw someone standing at the end of the hallway. It was Zork, standing motionless, his eyes wide and filled with fear. The sight of his friend sent a brief jolt of relief through Jack, but it was short-lived. "Zork," Jack called, skidding to a halt in front of him. "We need to talk. I don't know what's happening, but they're after me. They're calling themselves the Guardians. They're coming because of the word I said. The hippopotamus. What is going on?" Zork took a step back, his mouth opening and closing, as though he couldn't find the words to speak. His usual calm demeanor was gone, replaced by something else, a look of panic and urgency. Finally, he spoke in a whisper, as if afraid someone might overhear. "The Guardians have been watching," Zork said, his voice shaking. "They were asleep for a long time, but now they're awake. The hippopotamus is a signal, Jack. It's not just a word. It's a key to something ancient, something powerful. When you said it, you activated their attention. They'd been guarding something so dangerous that they'll stop at nothing to prevent it from being unleashed." Jack's mind was spinning. What are they guarding? What could be so dangerous? Zork looked around, his eyes darting nervously. "I don't know, but whatever it is, it has the potential to destroy entire galaxies. The Guardians are here to make sure it doesn't get out of control. They'll do whatever it takes to keep that power locked away. And now that they've noticed you, they'll never stop coming after you." Jack shook his head in disbelief. "I didn't ask for this. I didn't even know what I was saying when I spoke that word. I didn't know it would have this kind of effect." "I know you didn't mean it," Zork said quietly, his expression softening with empathy. "But it doesn't matter now. What matters is that they're here, and they're going to be watching your every move. You need to leave, Jack. If you don't, the Guardians will make sure you never get the chance to learn the truth." "But I don't want to run," Jack exclaimed, his voice full of frustration. "I can't just leave. I need to understand what's going on. I need to know what I've awakened and why the hippopotamus means so much." Zork's face grew more serious, his eyes filled with fear. "You don't understand, Jack. This isn't just about you. It's about something far bigger than anything you can imagine. The Guardians will make sure you never get close to the truth. They'll keep you locked up, or worse." Jack could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him, but something inside him refused to give up. He couldn't just run away and hide. He had to confront whatever this was, even if it meant putting himself in danger. He had to know the truth. "I'm not running," Jack said, his voice steady despite the fear bubbling up inside him. "I'm going to find out what's really going on. I don't care what the Guardians think. I'm not going to be their puppet." Zork's eyes widened in shock. "Jack, you don't understand. You don't know what you're dealing with. They'll tear you apart. You'll never stand a chance." But Jack's mind was made up. He had to keep pushing forward. "I don't care," he said firmly. "I'm going to find the answers, no matter what it takes." Zork looked at him for a long moment, his expression filled with a mixture of fear and admiration. Finally, he nodded, though it was clear he was still deeply worried. "Fine," he said softly, "but you have to promise me you'll be careful. If the Guardians find out what you're planning, they won't just stop at chasing you. They'll do everything they can to stop you from uncovering the truth." Jack nodded, determined. "I'll be careful, but I won't back down." Together, the two of them quickly left the hallway, moving toward a hidden part of the school where Zork said there might be answers. As they walked, Jack's mind raced. What could the Guardians be hiding? What was so dangerous that they would go to such extreme lengths to keep it locked away? And why had his word, his innocent mistake, triggered their wrath? The deeper they went, the more Jack felt like they were walking into the unknown. The building grew darker, quieter, the air heavier with tension. Jack could feel his heart pounding, but he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. Whatever was hidden in the depths of the school, he was going to find it. And when he did, he would finally uncover the truth, no matter the cost. Zork led him through a narrow passageway, down twisting stairs, and into an underground room that looked like a forgotten storage space. There, Zork gestured to a strange, glowing device in the center of the room, a relic of a long-forgotten time, its surface covered in strange symbols. This was it, the key to everything. The truth Jack had been searching for was right there, hidden in plain sight.